Okay, we're gonna get started, and the talk that I'm gonna give will kind of give you a glimpse into my most recent work, my teaching, my research interests and areas, and maybe you'll discover two things if I'm successful. The first is that curiosity is everywhere. It's all around us. It's in the middle of things, and it always changes. And the second, which may be surprising and is something that I discovered along the way, is that curiosity is more than just linguistically rooted to the notion of care. It's integral to the notion of care. And so I want to connect those to you. I taught here at UTD for 10 years. Roger and I made trouble. I'm now at UNT, at the Frisco campus. But maybe the most important thing that you should know about me is that, kind of like you, I've always looked at the world a little bit differently. This is me in Trinidad, my homeland. That's me, it's hard to tell. That's an afro that you see there as well. So my sessions are usually interactive. So why don't we all just get on the ground and take a look? No, just kidding. But it will.
Damien, can you get on the ground? You're performing.
It will be interactive. If you're at home, grab a loose leaf sheet of paper. If you're here, you should have a loose leaf sheet of paper as well. If not, we will pass one out to you. I want to start, and if you can have a seat, you're welcome to. So I want to start with the definition early in the field of design. It's from this book by John Christopher Jones. The earliest designers were actually engineers. And the definition of design that Jones gave was that design is the performing of a very complicated act of faith. I know Roger's an atheist.
I'm an atheist, about the moral.
But Jones, who is a Welsh designer and again kind of helped to create and foment this notion of scholarly design as well as practitioners' design, was really troubled by this notion. He describes how in the middle of the night he actually woke up and came up with a new definition of design, which was the bottom that you see there. Thoughts and actions intended to change thoughts and actions. And for those of us who are lit majors, he's actually referencing Goethe's idea of life can be thought of as two different realms, thoughts and actions. For those of us who are in design, we may remember Richard Buchanan's notion of fourth order design, the design of thoughts, Elizabeth Pastor's notion of design 4.0, the design of social things, and then Arnold Wasserman, who's at CMU for a number of years and helped to build Carnegie Mellon's design program. He talks about higher order design. We've got folks in the room here who helped to sort of found the field of interaction design. And Norm, we can fight later, but I don't think interaction designers are in the business of creating interfaces. I think we're actually in the business of designing memories. And so in order to think through this, I want you to grab that sheet of paper that I asked you to grab. What we're going to do is we're going to fold this sheet of paper. So you've got a solid sheet of paper right here. What I want you to do is up at the top left, write the word reality. Reality. Oh, you don't get participation points for today. Here you go.
Hey, Andrew. You got a piece of paper, Andrew?
No, no.
If you don't have one, that's okay. But just think of this as representing reality. Clearly, we're knee-deep in metaphor, and the idea here is that we are just going to understand how is design a consequence of memory. Now, what I want you to do is to fold that paper in half. And if you fold it in half, the word that I want you to write is either perception or perceive. Of all of the things that we experience in reality, this is representative of how much we can perceive. Now, it's not even accurate. We can perceive only a small amount. And this is the things that we use through our senses. Of the things that we can perceive, we can only attend to or give attention to an even smaller amount. And you know, if you're here and you're listening to my voice, I'm going to stop talking in a moment, and I just want you to focus on what you're hearing when I stop talking. For those of us in this room, where I'm presenting from, we're hearing the ceiling fans, we're probably hearing crinkling of paper. All of those things were there moments ago. We weren't paying attention to them, and our attention wasn't there, but we were perceiving them in the background. We can perceive more than we give attention to.
Hold on a second, but we can't hear their fans.
We can't hear their fans, but they're hearing it on their own as well. Of the things we give attention to, not everything embeds into our brains as engrams or memories. And collection of engrams you might think of as memories. Now, not all of our memories, and this is our last fold that we're making right here, are things that we can recall. And so when I begin my design projects, I now, rather than asking that sort of phrase of how might we, which is sort of the things that designers tend to ask, I instead ask a different question, which is, long after the experience that I'm trying to create has passed, what is the thing that I want people to recall? What's the memory that I want to remain after the fact? And, everybody here will know this example. I had the opportunity to work with Rick before he passed on the Edith O'Donnell website. And some of its brand presence, and it was tremendously rewarding to be able to work with Rick when I learned later that he was suffering from cancer. That was 2006. I think Rick passed in 2020 as well. And it was tremendously gratifying. I think it also gives us a sense of importance of what are the things that we're building when we think of it from the perspective of what does this mean 5 minutes from now, 5 days from now, 5 months from now, 5 years from now. Now, I want to put this, what I just told you, in the context of curiosity. And my current research focuses on giving designers a first orientation to what I think is a strange, a fascinating, and fragile phenomenon of being curious. And very much like the animation that the frame rate is not going at the proper mode, it's like a spring, and it can snap back on you. And it is fragile. So I want to talk you through two threads. The first is some work that I'm starting to do on defining, producing, and inviting curiosity. And then, like I told you, I want to talk to you through extending care and how care is connected to the notion of curiosity. We're going to dive in here, and a word can mean different things at different points in time. The word curiosity has meant different things at different points in time. I'm going to skip through some of this stuff that talks through the history of curiosity and just say that various different fields have made use of curiosity in various different ways. From philosophy and science, where Augustine dominated the view of curiosity as vice for something like 1,200 years, until Francis Bacon upset that. Psychologists who've explored in the last century and continuing on in this one how curiosity manifests. We in education want to sort of capture it to edify others. And then artists and designers, while not formal in any way, and this is what I'm trying to pioneer, is how do we, I don't want to say formalize curiosity. It is fragile. It's an interesting state,
but like a concept map to me.
It absolutely is a concept map, and this is a concept map of folks who've influenced and shaped my views of curiosity. If you're wondering what it is, the formal definition that I think is sort of all-encompassing is right here. It's recognizing, pursuing, and desiring novel, uncertain, complex, or ambiguous events. A lot of words. Maybe the best way to think of it is motivation to explore. 3 simple words: motivation to explore. Folks at Carnegie Mellon have said it's kind of like there's a curiosity gap or an information gap when there's a gap between what we know and what we want to know. And for those of us in education, we want to harness this natural power of curiosity. And what we will do, and businesses are doing this as well, is we will try to create a creative climate. So in ArtSci Lab, we worked on the state of things by creating specific processes that might make creativity or, if possible, curiosity more likely. Or you bring in people who demonstrate that trait of curiosity. So curiosity as a state or a trait. When you do that, you can create an environment of curiosity or creativity, which sort of sets that mood for that space or that culture or that thing, which can lead to openness to change. And this is the power of curiosity, is that it can lead to openness to change. It doesn't always. I'm working with businesses to use a incomplete, probably wrong model of curiosity. This isn't it. But a lot of businesses will use these 4 words that you see here: inform, attract, engage, and delight in a funnel. So if you think of a funnel up at the top as wider with the word inform, the word delight being down at the bottom and smaller. I don't like this metaphor because any viscous liquid you put in at the top will naturally, by the force of gravity, not go to the bottom. This is the Swiss cheese model. You've probably seen this with COVID. I think it's also true here. And if you think about it as businesses trying to create efforts to inform their audiences but are unable to attract them because there's an impasse there. There's not an aperture by which they can continue to do that. So they try something else. They inform and they attract in this case, but they fail to engage. And if you remember the last slide that I showed you, that curiosity has this ability to create openness to change. It's fragile. But if you're able to capture somebody's curiosity, you can create an opening, an aperture through which it's possible to engage. May not be likely, but it's possible to engage. And some of what I'm finding is that you can actually even shorten the distance between those moments of informing, attracting, engaging, and delighting. If you think of curiosity as a 2x2, psychologists have told us that there's 2 different types of motivations of it. Perceptual, you see this in animals. If you have pets, you'll see them sniffing out things, finding things, bringing them maybe to you, depending on the pet you have. Epistemic is, as far as we understand, primarily just in humans. That's curiosity as a motivation. The behavior of curiosity can either be specific, where we're persevering to find an answer, or diversive, which is just sort of avoiding boredom as a phenomenon. And as children, we tend to be on the bottom left. Our curiosity is diversive. We're all over the place. Our curiosity is not just in one spot. It's frenetic, and again, it's seeking refuge from boredom. As we get older, our curiosity becomes more specific, and it's looking for answers. One of the things that Aaron was talking about is how we, our behaviors as we age, and how I've been looking at how curiosity can help us as we age. One of the things that I've discovered is that our curiosity, while it's up at the top right of this 2x2 grid, it helps to have a diverse curiosity as you age. Learning a new language is actually a great way to keep the brain more plastic as well. So curiosity can be difficult to coax forward, and it is an emotion. So I'm just going to take you through the conversation we were having earlier about emotions. Emotions are complex. This is Robert Plutchik's wheel of emotion, where in the middle are 8 basic emotions. That's in that circle. There's 24 emotion combinations outside of that. And what I like about this as a designer, it's like colors on a color wheel. You can combine them in order to make new emotions. So he organizes these emotions by how frequently we experience them, often, sometimes, or seldom. Curiosity, maybe you saw it, is a sometimes felt emotion, and it's made of 2 emotions, trust and surprise. Now, there are other models that indicate curiosity might be made of other emotions as well. Plutchik's model is useful, but trust seems to indicate that there's a level of vulnerability. Our curiosity, again, it's fragile because that trust can be broken, it can be abused, it can be changed. The emotion of surprise is a response to the unexpected. I wasn't expecting that to happen. So what it does is it forces us to reorient, rethink, and recalibrate our notions of whatever it is that we were looking at.
Okay, Cassini, anybody in the group want to jump in? I've been trying to translate Cassini's ideas into French, and the problem is the word curieux most often means strange.
Yes.
So it has a different sort of center of meaning than in English. So what are the cross-cultural differences? I mean, you talk about Trinidad and Tobago, maybe kids are the same kind of curious. But are there cultural differences in curiosity?
Are you asking me or
or anybody?
Yeah.
There are people from very different cultures in the meeting at the moment.
I'll begin an answer.
Go ahead.
Here. If you look at the Oxford English Dictionary, it gives 17 different connotations of curiosity, right? And one of them being strange as well. And it's a word, or curious is actually the word. It's a word that, as I said at the beginning, it's meant different things in different ways. We have one word for it. French has one word as well. It's coming from the root of Latin. In Indonesian, it's 4 words. That's sort of the combination of 4 different ideas. What's curiosity in your language? What's the word and what's it mean?
I'm not very sure.
Okay. Do you know? Yeah?
In Hindi, what is the concept of curiosity?
So I'm gonna move forward here and show you that in Plutchik's model, curiosity is very fragile. If you look at this, you'll see that trust and surprise, the green and the blue, are right there in the middle. Curiosity is the result of that. But if you add joy, which is into its, if you add joy to surprise, you're yielded delight. It's a short distance. If you're able to make somebody curious, it's a short distance to joy and delight if you're able to do it. Delight is what Intuit tries to build. They don't have a minimally viable product, they have a minimally delightful product. And it's hard to continually surprise somebody and also bring joy to that. So it's a difficult emotion to sustain, because disappointment or shock, or what is the actual opposite of curiosity in Plutchik's model, which is cynicism, is always close by. And again, this is one way of thinking about it. So I'm going to run through now very quickly a model of curiosity that we can use as designers to build things.
Okay, I'm going to add another word. I wrote an article on the sublime in art and science, and I don't see, I guess it would be ecstasy or something. I mean, yes, it's joy, but there are things beyond joy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The sublime. And physicists enjoy certain concepts because they're... So why isn't the sublime on here, or ecstasy?
And there are other words that we might add, which are wonder or awe, as well to what you just said. The words that are here are really sort of making the point of the fragility of curiosity. And again, as a model, this breaks very quickly because it's not all encompassing in terms of the emotions that we exist, that we experience. I'm going to run through this really quickly. So, although we feel curious in Plutchik's model only sometimes, there are ways that we can coax it to come forward. And it all starts with an invitation. Something out there invites us to be curious, an experience, a person, something that catches our eye, an object. And these invitations adopt a variety of approaches that can elicit a variety of emotions. And as you can see on the bottom, trust is also needed. here. Now, these are not one-for-one. Challenge doesn't elicit anticipation, but these approaches on the left can elicit these types of emotions. Admittedly, everything that I'm showing you is positive. That's not always the case. Invitations require a response. We don't always even interpret invitations as such. We can accept or reject or ignore invitations, and there's so many invitations around us for us to be curious, we ignore most of them. If you think of J.J. Gibson's idea of affordances, affordances is anything we can do with anything around us, all of the possibilities. Most of it we ignore. If we respond to the prompt of curiosity, there's this inflection point where this necessary emotion of surprise begins to be felt. And I think we were talking about screenwriters. Screenwriters understand the importance of surprise, and there's this golden rule of storytelling that always give the audience what they want, just not how you are expecting it to happen. And it's an important thing for us as designers to think through, and that's where imagination, creativity come in. I have the word reward there at the end, but it's not an accurate word. If we're designing things, we want to design for rewards. This was sort of connected back to what Aaron was showing earlier, intrinsic or extrinsic motivators or intrinsic or extrinsic rewards. But kicking over a rock can simply reveal a diamond, can add dust to our shoes, it can reveal a scorpion, or any myriad of things that are out there. It's up to us to find out. Now, I want to transition to a concept that I'm beginning to explore, and this is how I'll kind of close the talk here. It's long been held that this idea of empathy is so critical to design. And empathy was actually one of the distinguishing characteristics that early designers said distinguishes it from the fields of art, the fields of science, the fields of business, or any others. And Nigel Cross here in this very famous article, Designerly Ways of Knowing, makes that argument. The Stanford D School popularized this notion from folks like Bob McKim and others around empathy, and so the design process starts with empathy. Rightly or wrongly, empathy has been under attack. Donald Norman wrote this article back in 2019 that sort of strikes a salvo at this idea of empathy and its importance to designers. And the title, Why I Don't Believe in Empathic Design, is really a provocation for us as designers. He says that empathy makes us believe that I can feel what you're feeling, or I can even know what you're feeling, when we ourselves don't often even know or can give voice to what we're feeling in the moment, let alone what everyone else around us is feeling or thinking. There's a wonderful book by Paul Bloom that asks us to consider evidence that reveals we don't know the difference between empathy, sympathy, or compassion. He argues against empathy and for rational compassion. This idea of empathic resonance is actually extremely biased. We feel empathy for people who look like us. So whatever I look like in whatever body I'm occupying is mirrored if you look more like me. And that empathic resonance leads to inherent biases in this. And then Bloom also identifies that even having too much empathy can be weaponized and enable people to act in ways that may help one individual at the cost of larger society as well. So what ends up happening in design classes is that we take this notion of being able to step out of our shoes and step into others. Most students don't actually do that. Most students keep their shoes on, and that's what you're seeing there on the left, and say, I know enough about you, even though I've only spent maybe an hour with you, or people like you because I've stuffed you into personas and know enough about you to be able to design for you. And what they're really doing is never taking off their own shoes. We can't take out our biases. What we try to do is, like Mr. Rogers over there on the left, is to sort of design with humility. I'd like to know more about you, and instead of designing for you, design with you. Now, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through these. These are 4 things that have something in common. Maybe you've identified a couple of things here already. I'll give you the first one. This is Robert, California, played by David Spader. You recognize that as the state of California. That's a Ferrari, California. And that famous line from Soundgarden, I'm looking California. We've got a person, a place, a thing, and an idea. A person, a place, a thing, and an idea. That's, if we're an English major, that is that's a noun, right? So empathy is actually limited to people. Our 21st mindset basically says that we don't think of understanding inanimate objects around us. We only think of understanding people through empathy. And if we can only empathize with humans, and in very limited ways, maybe we as designers really need a larger assemblage of emotions. So going back to that chart, if I add the word curious, if I add the word care, it expands the circle. And this is one of the things that I'm beginning to explore, is that can we, through building a curious lens, enable the emotions of empathy, which is not altogether a bad thing, but we need to be aware of its limits. Can we enable greater care for the things around us? And Roger, to your point earlier, the reason why I'm talking about care is sort of rediscovering this idea that's been held for a long time in the word itself, that curious, our modern word, comes to us from Latin, which simply means concern. It's also the word from which we get the word cure, as a means of healing. And so when I was a kid, I remember my dentist telling me, it's very easy, just brush the teeth that you want to keep, which caused a lot of anxiety whenever a tooth would fall out as a kid. Apparently I didn't take very good care of it. And this is something that Ron Wakari, in a recent book from MIT Press, talks about, that, hey, human-centered design is actually part of the problem itself. And some colleagues, Paul Rogers and Craig Bremner, talk about care about the things we design as an integral part of looking at larger circles, the social, the technological, the economic, the environmental, the political effects of what we build. And so if we take this back to this notion of taking care of the things you want to keep, maybe we need to apply that for those of us living in the Anthropocene that only care for the planet you want to keep. And I'm going to stop there. I've got a couple of additional slides, but I think that goes through the sort of meat of what I wanted to convey here. Curiosity and care are very connected. Maybe the final thought that I'll leave with you is that curiosity is everywhere. Is it also in you?